Hey you guys, so I decided to come back really quick because I wanted to talk about another thing that affected me growing up. What I had to understand is that I didn't really learn what unconditional love meant. Not only that, I didn't really learn how to make true and lasting friendships. Now, again, I have been gone for 20 years, so I'm not saying that this still applies where I don't know what unconditional love is or, how to make friends now. But as a witness, I did not learn that. Most of us can attest to the fact that we didn't really learn that. What we learned is how to have conditional love. What we learned is how to be tolerant of and appreciate and love those who think and act like us. And the moment somebody shows that they're dissenting, they have different views, they're leaving the organization, we can cut them off so quickly. In addition, people that we meet at school or at work, we don't really know how to get to know them as an individual a lot of times because we're so used to only getting to know people that are just like us, and we're really not getting to know them. And I seen I think his name is Coach Rod, an ex-witness who talks about the psychological effects that these things have on witnesses. And so if I can find his video, I'll put a link of it in the description. But he's the one who made me kind of want to talk about this. I just recently saw this particular video that he did, and he talks about how we were so used to just getting to know other people or talking to other people that were just like us. So it was like you weren't really getting to know them because you already knew their schedules. You already knew what they believed. You already knew what type of stuff they did during the week. You know what I'm saying? Because you did the same thing as a witness, right? You had the same type of schedule. I mean, it might have been just a little couple days different. Yours could have been Tuesday, Thursday. Theirs could have been Monday, Wednesday going to the meetings. But pretty much you knew what magazine, you knew what they thought, their stance on particular subjects and all of that, right? But when it comes to reality, real life, that's not how it is. So you actually have to get to know people, right? And I had a, normal experience with that as a young child because I really wasn't all the way, consumed yet. When I was probably about 10, just in school, 10, 11, I had a couple friends at school. We were in the same classes every year, right? Up until we got into our early teenage years. And we did become friends. But as I started to get a little older, in the teenage, like I said, the teenage years, I started to want to take the friendship a little further, like have them come to the house or be able to go to their house, right? Be able to go to the mall with them. But I knew that my parents wouldn't allow that if they weren't witnesses, or at the very least, if they weren't studying. So I ended up offering a study to them, and they ended up doing it. One of them studied longer than the other, and eventually they both no longer wanted to study. And it was at that time that I had to make a decision. I decided to cut them off. In my mind, I had to rationalize it some way that, if I truly care about them and know that they're going to die in Armageddon if they don't change their ways or come around and be a witness or whatever, it's going to be very hard for me to, I'm going to always want to talk about this to them. So it's just not going to work because they are already expressing that they don't want, to study. So I ended up cutting off the friendship. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I had to bury my feelings about that because they were actually some true friends that I met organically, and it was all authentic. We connected at school. But in comparison to the witness kids that my parents had no problem with me hanging around, these girls, there was no comparison. They were much better, to me, as far as even personalities, as far as how we got along, our interests outside of an organization. We had so much in common. But yet I had to just dismiss all of that. Just dismiss all of that and act like I didn't feel any of that for them in order to remain faithful and do what I thought Jehovah would have wanted me to do. And so that was very, very difficult for me. But at the time, I just consumed myself with being more out in the ministry, becoming an auxiliary pioneer, trying to stay focused. And I didn't really allow myself to feel the weight, the feelings that I felt as a result of doing that. But sometime after I left the organization, probably about 24 years old or something like that, I ran into one of the girls. And, well, she was a young woman at that time. We were at like somebody's barbecue or something. And when she saw me, she immediately was very, very excited and happy, almost looked like she got teary-eyed, and said, "Tawana?" And I said, "Wow, you look familiar. I just don't remember you. I don't remember your name." And she told me her name, and then we got to talking, and she, within the first 10 minutes, told me how hurt she was of what, how I had cut off the friendship years ago, which had been, 10 years prior. And we tried to stay in touch after that, talked on the phone a few times, but it really didn't go anywhere. We really no longer had anything in common anymore. But years after that, I would say about 6 or 7 years later, somehow I was just thinking about that. And I started crying. Like, I didn't even let myself feel it even when I ran into her. It took that long for me to actually feel it. 6 or 7 years later, the gravity and the weight of what that was and what that actually did to me. I had to think about the fact that I didn't even remember her name. How is it possible, as close as she was to me and how much I loved her for all those years, how did I not remember her name? And immediately the thought clicked into my mind. It's because you buried it. You buried her. You had to act as though she did not exist. You had to act as though she was already dead, because in your mind, you had to say she was going to be dying in Armageddon anyway, so you might as well treat her as though she's already dead. And now, when I say that, it sounds really crazy and odd, especially to people who aren't witnesses. But I know for a fact that that is what we do in order to deal with these things. But it's not necessarily conscious. It's not necessarily conscious. So immediately, it was like an immediate thing that I had to do. And I buried that, which is why I just forgot her name, because it was like she didn't even exist. Almost like she never even existed. Who can do such a thing? That is just completely mind-boggling. And it really, when I start looking at these things, you guys, it really starts to make me see why I act a certain way or why I'm a certain way with people. Like in relationships, like dating and different things after I left the organization. I was the type of person where we broke up or, you got on my nerves or whatever, and, I just walk away and don't look back, and it seemed like we didn't even know, I never knew you existed. Like I was like that type of person. And I realized that that has to do with my foundation of being raised as a witness. Because who is able to just do that? if you really feel something for somebody, which I used to say I did, and I know that in my heart I actually did, how was I so much able to compartmentalize it in my mind that it seemed as though it didn't affect me? It's crazy, but that's what it was. So anyway, yeah, what do you guys think about that? Do you guys have any experiences like that where you had to, stop being friends with somebody, or, cut somebody off in a manner like this? Because it can be very detrimental to you. And then after you leave, like I said, you realize that your ability to make friends, you actually have to learn how to do it, because that's not what we were used to doing. And when I was younger and I made those two friends, that was a very organic, authentic situation. But after that, for the majority of the time being, the rest of my teenage years and all that, it was just fake friendships. The type of friends that my parents was okay with me hanging out with just because they were witnesses. And they could be, living double lives or whatever. But my parents just thought, oh, well, they go to the Kingdom Hall, so they're good. And so that was just the fakest thing. And so once I left, I just really realized that it was an uncomfortable place to be when it came to getting to know people, getting to know my coworkers, getting to know, people when I did go to, a college at one point, just talking to people and just not feeling like we had to agree on everything, or, it was just a weird, awkward place to be. And it just one of those things that you just don't even think about until you actually, are faced with it. So again, let me know what you guys think. If you guys have similar experiences that you can share, just leave them down in the comments. So I look forward to talking with you on my next video, and thank you so much for watching.